Well, I'm sure that this comment section is going to be absolutely delightful. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 4 because it just passed 100 million consoles. And I want to try and speculate what this could mean for the PlayStation 5. Now, even if you're somebody who's never owned a Sony console, you've never actually owned a PlayStation, this is a monumental milestone. I mean, this is a very big deal. 100 million consoles is something that only a few systems have ever managed to reach, and what's interesting is this is the fastest that anybody's ever done it. The previous record holder was actually the PlayStation 2, which hit 100 million units in just a couple years. This has now officially done it faster. That means the PlayStation 4 is outselling the PlayStation 2 in an equal time frame. Now, this is crazy numbers, but more specifically, I think that it comes down to a very exact science. Now, in my opinion, Sony has done very well this generation. They've made a lot of very smart moves. They've come out with very good exclusives. They managed to do some very smart marketing early on. But the biggest factor here is that I do think that Microsoft had some pretty big stumbles at the start. Their earliest press conference, the reveal of the Xbox One, was a little bit of a dumpster fire. This isn't me trying to be a meanie or bash down on Microsoft or their hardware. I'm just saying that that earliest announcement was a very bad mess. They just took so much time explaining things that ended up being patched out. Like all this weird picture-in-picture dual TV machinima strategy guides. A lot of the stuff that they talked about at this reveal event now in 2019 is completely obsolete. And it unfortunately kind of left this impression to people that Microsoft is not making a gaming console, whereas Sony, on the other hand, made the very brilliant decision to actually come out on stage and say one thing over and over again: the PlayStation is the place for games. I actually own, just personally, about 500 PS4 games. I still don't even know how I have so many. There's just been so many indie things, there's been so many sales, there's been so many really cool games that have actually been dirt cheap. But the biggest thing it definitely comes down to, in my opinion, is that they just try to stack up those exclusives. Now, when you just look back through the history of PlayStation, their exclusives are a very big deal. These are the things that not only sell the highest, they end up actually leading to the biggest console sales. Gamers are a very unique demographic in that while we do enjoy a good deal, additionally, there is a big batch of premium consumers who will pay any price for a unique experience. As long as a game is good, as long as a game is fun, there's a good chance that people are going to buy the heck out of it. And I do think that in many ways, over the course of the last couple generations, Sony has gotten better and better at this. Now, let me just try and say the most mind-blowing aspect of this. Now, because of this sales, of the top 5 highest selling consoles ever, 4 of them are PlayStations. The highest ones ever are actually PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 1, the Nintendo Wii, followed now by the PS4 and the PS3. That is bonkers. It's showing the fact that Sony is just murdering it generation after generation. This brings me directly to the topic of the PlayStation 5, because I'm somebody who very much thinks that the PS5 is something to be excited about. I mean, I think the PlayStation 5 in general is probably going to be another powerhouse with even bigger and better games. But additionally, I do think that now we need to sort of consider the PlayStation potential. That's actually what I've been calling it, which is the fact that Sony finds a way to really maximize their own efforts. Now, something I thought was very, very brilliant, but also rather subtle and not super noticed, was at the beginning of the PlayStation 4 generation, they bought the exclusive rights to advertising of some major games. They managed to make it where if they had a big trade trailer for Call of Duty or Destiny. At the end of it, it would say the PlayStation logo, as an effort to simultaneously spread awareness of big cool games, but also to imply to casual gamers, hey, this is the place you play. The PlayStation can be your home. Now, to me, this was a tremendous effort. This was something that really managed to get eyes on their product, and it managed to get people very, very hyped about a machine that, at the time, wasn't exactly having a huge catalog. I think that, in many ways, the PlayStation 5 is going to try and replicate this success. They're probably going to come out and very early on start to be like, alright, are y'all ready to see the crazy, mind-blowing future of PlayStation? Bam, 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 bam! And they just start hammering out trailers, all of which really are covered in PlayStation logos. Many of these will be third-party, many of these will be cross-platform, but Sony is definitely, the longer that we go into the future, the longer we go into this next generation, it seems like Sony is only concerned with the public consensus. It seems like, just by judging the internet and just by talking to people at like conventions and stuff, a lot of people this generation considered PlayStation 4 the default system. Yes, this is a huge thing. This has been astronomical. A lot of people have said when they're trying to shop for a game console, what's the price of the PlayStation? They start to think of this as the main place you go to play current generation stuff. Oh, you want to try Spider-Man? Oh, you want to try Shadows of Mordor? All of this stuff, people ended up coming to the PlayStation 4, even though it is on the Xbox One. This is by far the most important aspect of this generation, is that Sony really managed to enter the public space. They managed to go very, very mainstream, in my opinion. This is great. I think that in general it's showing the fact that now gaming as a market is bigger than ever. But additionally, Sony has managed to really sort of position themselves at the forefront and say, hey, you want toys? We got the best stuff. There's random games you can play that are silly for 5 minutes or 5 hours. But separately from that, do you want super serious, really heavy storyline games like The Last of Us? Well, we could do that. I'm getting choked up just talking about Last of Us. This is a twofold strategy that has been extremely successful, and I'm actually expecting that we're going to see that once again in the next generation. The PlayStation 5 is probably going to try and do stuff like full backwards compatibility to make sure that the 100 million PlayStation users have a thing to jump onto, but I think that's also, there's definitely going to be a huge effort by Sony to really try and emphasize the fact that game developers should pick the PS4 first. This is something that definitely made a huge impact, which is that early on this generation, almost everything started on PlayStation. Almost everything. No Man's Sky, tiny indie games, weird card puzzlers, all sorts of interactive experiences that were just really trying to push the boundaries. People were willing to experiment on PlayStation first, not just because it had a bigger pool of players, but additionally because Sony was reaching out to them. Sony was giving out dev kits. Sony was going to game jams and finding games that were like 90% complete and saying, hey, put that on PlayStation. This really did lead to not just more games, but more people just talking about it. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, that managed to lead to so much success this year is that Sony has just been doing more sales than ever. Now, let me be clear about something. Sony has actually been selling less consoles this year. Everybody's actually been selling a lot less consoles except the Switch. The numbers are down. But I think that's just because everybody realizes now that the next generation will be beginning probably by next winter. I think that this is all crazy. I think that it is actually a very good sign for everybody in the market. Even if you don't like PlayStation, even if you think that Sony censors a bunch of games and is a totally evil corporation, you shouldn't support them, but I think you should celebrate this. It's just such a clear sign that this industry continues to grow exponentially. I'm excited to see what happens with the PlayStation 5 because this is just showing that Sony has some major money in the bank. I'm hoping they use this to invest to make sure that whatever happens in 2020 is even more epic, but there is a chance that they end up absolutely blowing it. I'm sure we'll know very, very soon. But what do you think? Are you actually really happy that the PlayStation managed to pass 100 million PS4s sold, or to you is this just dumb math? You don't care, it's just whatever. I mean, consoles shipped is a very interesting thing, to me anyways. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people, like all the top comments are going to be, Xbox is better! Ah! Well, you know what? I love my Xbox too. I'm just saying this is a PlayStation News Day. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.